Good morning, everybody. Here are 5 ways to better your wildlife photography. So, number one, we're going to talk about something that I'm a big fan of, eye contact. We're overall just getting on eye level with your subject. So, we're going to start off with a little exercise here. We have two images I'm going to show off. We have this image of these cute little red foxes that were just hanging out, and we have this image that you probably have seen of the same red fox. Now, when we're talking about eye contact, which two images or which of these images kind of draws your eye a lot more? This image or this one? Now, for the most part, I believe everyone's going to say that they were more drawn to this image as opposed to this one for a number of reasons, but I would say the main thing is due basically to the eye contact in this photo. So the question is, what makes eye contact so important? And this even delves deep into more of a psychological thing where naturally we are drawn to eye contact, even in social settings. When you're talking to someone, eyes are really important. When you're kind of focusing and you're kind of looking at a person, you're keeping that eye contact with that individual. It shows a level of confidence. It shows a level of caring. You're listening. You're attentive. You're there. If you're kind of looking away, if you're not really focused on what's happening, that kind of disengages you from what's happening, and that leads basically into photography as well. So when we're doing wildlife photography, it is super important that you try to get on eye level with your subject and you try to also capture these amazing eye contact moments because they kind of draw you into the photo. When you're scrolling on a social media, when you're going on a website, you're going to be quickly kind of drawn into the subject. And if those eyes are looking right at you, it's going to help basically draw you in. And I have a few other examples because it doesn't really have to be something as extreme as this. When I say eye contact or eye level, I just mean kind of being on that same plane or level as the animal and having their eye in the frame. So, for example, we have this Junko that I took. Great example as well. It was a bit lower, of course, so I had to kind of crouch down and get on eye level with this subject to really get this shot of this bird looking at me. And once again, it's kind of, looking in my direction, it has a nice little pose going on. So that eye contact really draws you in. And I mentioned a point about getting on eye level. You had to crouching low for this image. If you go to this one, I see a lot of people when they post their photography, unfortunately, they're not on eye level. This image, of course, is Fox is lower than me, and I'm shooting down. And that's something that you really should not be doing. You should not really be shooting down or shooting too far up. You can do what you want, but the reason why is because you get images like this where it may be cute, but from a photography perspective and capturing a really nice moment, it doesn't really stand out. There's too much going on. I'm shooting down. There's not great eye contact. There's distractions. There's the background in the way. So if you just focus on changing up your angle and getting another perspective, you can end up getting another shot similar to this, or waiting and getting something like this. It's taking a while to pop up on my screen, like that. So eye contact is super important. I have some other examples as well that I want to show off as well. This is of a pelican that I took. Same thing as well. Excellent eye contact. And then lastly, I think I have one more image of this bird right here. Great eye contact. So remember, when you're doing your photography, focus heavily on getting on eye level with your subject. Helps with the composition as well. So when you're kind of getting nice and on their same level, it helps blur out the background, but also helps get you a really beautiful image and pose for your animal. So number two, we're going to talk about something that's pretty simple, but people kind of overlook this one, and it's going to be shooting vertical for social media. Now, of course, when you're shooting photography, you have the option of shooting both horizontal and vertical. What I mean by that is going to be your photo layout. Now, if you want, you can keep shooting horizontal if that's your personal preference, but if you are trying to grow on social media like Instagram or TikTok or any other platform, I heavily advise you to start shooting vertical. That doesn't mean you can't shoot horizontal because you can take really cool images for your website, for example. So if I go here on my website, this was a horizontal shot, and they're really good for things like banners and stuff like that. But if we're talking about displaying your work on social media, it's very important to shoot vertical. The reason why, because I have an example here. I have a picture that I shot. Um, where'd it go? It just went away. I had a picture that I shot right here, and really cool shot. I think this was taken in Italy. It's of this red deer, but it's a horizontal capture. I personally would have preferred to be a vertical capture, and the reason why is because we are living in a time now where most people are viewing content on their phones. Very rarely people are going to a website or using their laptop for stuff. Some people are, but the majority of people are viewing your work through social media. So having your work vertical, your pictures take up more of the screen. So when they're scrolling and they're scrolling and they're scrolling, if your pictures are really small, if they're kind of cut in half, if they're not, of a nice large size, your image may not be picked up because people aren't really going to spend that much time on them. But if your image is really large and it's taking up a big portion of the screen, people are going to be more inclined to kind of stick around and kind of observe and view the image a lot more. So doesn't mean you can't shoot both. Once again, it's important for you to kind of mix things up and have horizontal images if you need them. At times, I'll shoot them if I know I'm going to be using them for something, but the majority of my work is going to be shot in vertical, and that goes for video as well. So something to keep in mind if you're trying to grow on social media, switch to, vertical. And all that means is that you're just turning your camera to the side, so you don't have to overthink it. There's no crazy editing process you have to go through. You can turn your camera to the side. Another trick you could also do if you're shooting at high enough megapixels and you have your subject in frame, you can also do a nice crop. But just be mindful that if whatever composition that you kind of have set up in your horizontal format, if you crop in, it might ruin that look that you were going for. So I personally always like to shoot in your vertical format. Number three, pose and action. So a big thing that you should focus on in your photography is capturing a moment, capturing something that's gonna catch someone's attention, something that kind of tells a story. So I'm gonna show you some examples of some pictures that I took that they were decent, but they didn't really capture, they didn't really they weren't that engaging for me. And I'm gonna show you some examples of images that work really well. So this is a picture that I took some time ago of this tree creeper. It's a solid picture. I mean, it's a nice detail, nice sharpness, but the bird isn't really doing anything for me. It's not really that exciting. It's a decent shot, but there's no real story being told here. And a lot of that is due to the fact that the pose is a bit off. The bird's not really looking at my direction. This is a weird angle. Got some branches in the way, so it's not really a great image for anything. Look, like I said, the details are nice, lighting is decent, but the pose is just off, and the action is not really much happening. It's climbing a tree. This is another bird of prey. This is a bird of prey that I took as well, and it's an okay shot. I got the bird in flight, but there's nothing really being told here. It's flying. There's it doesn't really catch your attention. So when you're focusing on your photography, you should be trying to, when you take your images, you have a lot to choose from. Think of what you can tell, what image tells the best story, what image really, has some form of emotion, whether it's happiness, rawness, there's some, danger, mystery. You have to find some kind of story you can tell with your image. So for example, one of my most recent pictures that you've probably seen taken of this crazy osprey diving into the water and catching this fish. And I just love this shot. It's a great action shot. I have plenty of pictures of ospreys. I have a lot of pictures of them, but I wanted to capture a different type of moment. And this moment right here of it crashing into the water, wings are up, kind of covering. The eyes are slightly covered. You can still see some of this eye contact piercing through. And then you have the fish there, the water droplets around. It's a really intense, wild shot. And even going further, yeah, some flight shots as well. It's just taking off, water droplets frozen in time, the wings, beautiful wing movement, the fish with its funny expression, and then a nice little close up here. Same exact thing of just, dripping water off of the feathers, the crazy sharp talons, the fish again. So it's finding those moments in your photography that can really stand out. And it doesn't really have to be anything too crazy. It can, your poses and your action can be something as intense as this. It could be a bird like this. That's just, flexing its wings, fluttering them a little bit. Nothing too crazy, but it's kind of leaning back, looking at you. It could be a lot of it could be something like this, where you'll have a bird in flight, one of my favorites of this egret, and yeah, just taking off. So when you take your pictures out in the field, I'm sure you'll have a lot to choose from. And I think people kind of miss that point of finding the right ones to post or the right ones to put a lot of work into. And it's something that once again I've struggled with for the longest time. Not every shot needs to be a groundbreaking masterpiece. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you can have a really you can take plenty of pictures, but the main thing is what's appealing, what's eye-catching, and what looks nice. So number three, environment and background, probably one of the most important aspects when it comes to your photography. Nailing your environment. So what do I mean by that? So when we're out in the field, we'll have different types of scenarios. You could be in an urban city environment. You can be in a rainforest. You could be at the beach. You could be in the snow. It could be underwater. There's so many types of environments when it comes to your photography, and it's going to be balancing out the environment with your main subject. So I have two examples here of two birds, two turacos, two different species, during my time in Africa, and one was a keeper, and one wasn't a keeper. So I'm going to give you a chance to look at both of them, and I'm sure you can tell which one was the keeper and which one wasn't the keeper. So obviously the our beautiful blue Tarako here was the keeper. And you can look, and I want you to take it some time and think to yourself, what is wrong with this image? So there's a few things wrong with this image. Unfortunately, number one, my main subject is blocked off by this giant tree here. Now, this may seem like a really big obvious thing, but believe me, I think a lot of people kind of make a lot of mistakes with their photography when it comes to their environment. Sometimes it's not going to be as, in your face like this, but I'll show some other examples as well of things that can almost impact your photography. But for this example right here, my subject is pretty far away, and this giant branch is here. And even if this branch wasn't here, I could probably make this work. But I would say another thing is the fact that there's a lot of distractions going on here in this picture, all the leaves and stuff like that. But the main thing is there's a giant branch that's kind of taking away from the subject. And of course, over here, we have a more open area, nice little branch. Bird is here, and to some people, environment kind of comes down to personal choice. And what I mean by that is some people may view this branch coming down right here as a huge distraction. So they would actually go into their editing tool and delete this branch. I personally don't care that much. I think it looks fine the way it is, but I could clean this image up way more with editing tools and delete this whole branch here and just have a nice stick here. I kind of like it because it adds to the environment of, where the bird is at, and it's a sense of a bit more of a wild image, a bit showing that imperfection. I personally think that when things are a bit too clean in certain pictures, or they're a bit too perfect, it kind of takes away from the vibe of the picture. But that's just me. So when you're focusing on your photography, really trying to nail your environment. I'm going to show some other examples as well of different types of environment scenarios. We have this deer looking at me, but it's kind of surrounded by all these plants. Cormorant, and it's kind of just hanging out on this rope here. And this is an example of like a more of a maybe like urban-y, not as natural environment. So not your environments don't always have to be like grass or trees or nature. They can be parts of, man-made stuff as well. And they can make for some really interesting shots. And lastly, number five, and the most important aspect when it comes to photography, and it's going to be lighting. Lighting, lighting, lighting. I cannot stress how important lighting is, no matter if you're doing wildlife photography, wedding photography, portrait photography, street photography, landscape, whatever type of photography you're going to be doing. Lighting is going to be the most important thing when it comes to your photography. And the reason why is because that's how our cameras work, if you think of it that way. Your camera is going to be heavily impacted on the type of light that you have, and it can make or break a photo. And unfortunately, lighting isn't going to be as simple. It's going to take some time if you're a beginner, of course, to kind of get lighting down. It definitely took me some time. I'm going to go over some of that in my best camera settings for photography video when I work on that. So it took me a long time to really understand the different types of lighting because I'm gonna go over a few, but there's like direct lighting, there's backlit, there's sunset, there's direct, there's a lot, it's overcast. There are different types of lighting scenario that you're going to be going through, especially in wildlife photography. People who do like studio photography, they have the privilege of being able to control their elements, so they can control how much light is being used on their subjects. Us, unfortunately, as wildlife photographers, we do not have that privilege. So whenever we are out, we have to check the weather. We have to check what time we're going out, and whatever light we have, that is the light that we have. Now, luckily, we live in a day and age where we can do a lot of editing to help out with bad lighting, but technology can only do so much, and it's really good that we get things right in the field first. So let's go over some images that I took, and some of them are great examples of the type of lighting. And I'm trying to explain to you how I kind of corrected them or made them better. So this is a nice image of this blanking on the name. I'm pretty sure this is like a Eastern bluebird. And this is the edited image. If I take off the edit, this is the natural raw file. This was shot in a very overcast environment. So you see there is some light kind of there. He's somewhat backlit as well because he's not bright. A lot of light is kind of coming in this direction. This was on a really overcasty, rainy day. I'm not the biggest fan of shooting in those conditions. You can make it work. You can kind of get some good photography out that way. I've heard from many people that you can definitely get some good shots in overcast, and you can, but you kind of have to be able to master your light in that situation. So this was a decent shot, but I was able to kind of bring it back by increasing the exposure and making it, excuse me, a lot brighter and really bringing the colors out. The reason why I think it's a bit more of a challenge sometimes is because without that direct light, some of the feathers or color of an animal can be a bit faded. And I've had that experience photographing the glossy ibis. I found a glossy ibis, but unfortunately it was on a really overcast day like this, and the colors were completely faded. And I came back on a different day when it was nice and sunny, and I was able to get some really nice shots of those feathers being bright and shiny. So choosing your correct days can definitely impact your photography. So that's overcast. We have an image here of this coot that I edited. I never really posted this image because I wasn't really the big fan of this edit, so I kind of left it alone. But the raw file looks like this. This is of a more, I would say, like a nice sunny sunrise morning. So the light's kind of up in this direction, it's kind of hitting it in its face. If we zoom in, uh, and this can make for some really decent shots as well. You have to really balance your light and your shadows. So make sure that, you're kind of getting the image the way you want it, meaning that like if you want the eye to be in the focus and more of the light, make sure you put yourself in that area. Otherwise, you'll have the main face, for example, the eye in this shadow section. So all that means is that if the bird was going this in this direction, his eye would be dark. So the way his back of his head is, the light's coming from this direction. So it works for this way, but if he was going the opposite way, or coming towards me, I might have an issue, more of a challenge. And that's basically that's natural. So figuring out positioning yourself where the light is going to be key. This is an image of a mourning dove. This is a sunset. So we have the sun at its back, shadow right here. This is a nice image. I wasn't really a big fan of it. Just there's a lot going on. The pose is kind of but you can definitely get some really beautiful sunset uh images when you kind of wait at the perfect time. But noticing, of course, getting yourself in the perfect spot. So making sure you're facing the sun. So if I was, for example, this direction, like if I was facing this bird head on, the bird would look back. It'll look all black because it'd be backlit. So I have an example of a backlit I'll show you after this, but this is a sunset shot. So the sun's coming from this direction, hitting the back of the bird, and I'm kind of standing face on, and it's giving me this nice glow effect. So you get that really what they call it that like sunset beautiful glow. This is an example of a backlit photo. So this is of an I'm blanking. I want to say Cooper's Hawk. And this is a backlit photo. So I know it's backlit because it's so bright in the background. And the sun is actually behind it because if you look closely, the light is coming from the behind his feathers. This is a backlit photo. I'm not the biggest fan of backlit photos. Now, you can make it work with some artistic vision, but I personally do not like taking backlit photos. I would say that if you are doing photography, it is best that you have your subject in the light and the light isn't coming at you, because otherwise we'll get an image like this where the bird is there, but unfortunately it's kind of dull and there's not really much I can do with it. Plus the stick is in the way. So it wasn't really a great photo to begin with, but it is a backlit photo. Here's an example of a a direct hit photo where basically the light is coming straight on and is hitting my subject right in the face. And this could be a blessing and a curse depending on what you're shooting. If the animal is an all white bird, sometimes you might have to really be careful with those colors, with the highlights, because you might overexpose your photo. But I usually like shooting in this type of light, where the light is hitting my subject face on, and I'm kind of getting a nice, good shot. So it helps my camera because the animal's in focus, everything's nice and sharp and brightly lit, and my camera has an easy job of picking up on the animal because it's in so much beautiful light. Moving on. One of my favorite shots is deer. This is an edit. If I go to the natural phase, this is like your typical, if you're going to be in the forest, your rainforest lighting, your forest lighting. So you'll have some light there, but most of it will kind of be impacted by the trees. So you'll have to kind of wait and really find that opening where the light is kind of coming through. So a lot of the time you will have to really watch your ISO, watch your camera settings, because certain cameras aren't don't certain lenses, excuse me, don't really work too well in really low light conditions. This is a really low light condition photo that I was able to kind of spruce up and bring to life. And let's do two more. We have this beautiful swallow here. I did a nice little edit with it, kind of brought it to life. And here's an example of how you can bring things to life. Okay, this is the original. And this is not really a great photo. It's super, super dark. I'm pretty sure I was in the wrong position because the light is here and it's super dark. So I was able to save this image and this is what I came up with. I was able to really kind of brighten it and bring back that detail. So you can make it work. It's just that, sometimes it won't always be this easy. And lastly, this image, one of my favorite images of all time. Here's the edit. Here is the raw. So huge difference. Once again, if you know how to edit, you can definitely save images. So this was basically taken at sunset. We waited a long time for this. The deer finally showed up and the sun was on its way down. So luckily I was able to get a nice capture of it. My camera was able to capture some nice detail. But as you can tell, it is a really, really, really dark image because that sun is on its way out. So I was able to bring it back to life with some editing and really spruce it up. So if we kind of saw this in the morning, we probably would have seen something similar to this. So, yes, once again, lighting is going to be super important when it comes to your photography. Figuring out the best light can make or break your photo. And a quick recap, once again, the best 5 ways to better your photography are going to be eye contact. Start shooting vertical, finding a great pose and action, choosing the correct environment, and then lastly, lighting, lighting, lighting. That's all. Until next time.